Hi everyone, welcome to another version of HeroTalks. Today we're focusing on CSR and sustainability and specifically talking about packaging. So I'm very excited to have this conversation. My name is Lena Carlson and I'm a Senior Specialist Corporate Communications here at Delivery Hero. And I'm joined by three wonderful panelists and I will let them introduce themselves in a second. Firstly, we have Patrick Rouse from Delivery Hero. Hey Patrick. Then we also have Nicole Tirico, who's joining us all the way from America, even from Eco Products. Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
And also Daniel Solomon, who is the founder of EroGo. So welcome everyone. I'm very excited to talk to you guys today. The reason we're actually having this conversation is that naturally becoming more sustainable is a really important part of what we're doing here at Delivery Hero. And we have really high ambitions to kind of build a company that future generations can be proud of. You might have heard that a few months ago, back in July, we announced our new sustainable packaging program, which you will hear a lot about today. But that's not where the conversation ends. I think that's really where the conversation begins. And that's basically what we want to find out today is what are different companies around the world doing? So Patrick, I will let yourself introduce yourself.
No worries at all, Lena, and thanks for having me and lovely to be here. Hello everyone, my name's Patrick. I'm a Sustainability Manager here at Delivery Hero. My role kind of encompasses a few different things, but the main efforts that I do for Delivery Hero is I'm the Global Program Coordinator of the Global Sustainable Packaging Program, which I think, as Lena said, is going to be a huge topic of conversation today. In addition to that, I help kind of coordinate some efforts in the sustainability and product space. And when we say product, we mean building more sustainability into our software and into our apps, be they consumer-facing or restaurant partner-facing. And I also help coordinate a few efforts on the kind of mental health and mental well-being side of the topics here at Delivery Hero. Totally not related to the environmental stuff, but just something I do in addition. So yeah, really looking forward to the conversation today. And thanks, Lena.
Welcome, Patrick. Nicole, you're the Director of Marketing at Eco Products. Tell us, what are you doing and what is Eco Products?
Sure. So Eco Products is a provider of food service packaging that is made from renewable resources or plant-based materials or recycled content. So that's what we say at the top line level. I would also say that our mission goes beyond that and really starts talking about how we can help customers be better stewards of the environment. And for those that are interested, start talking about waste diversion. My role, Director of Marketing, been with the organization about 10 years, actually 11. 10 of those have been in product development, and then recently moved into the marketing role about a year ago. Within my role, I'm responsible for marketing communications, but also sustainability. Sustainability is core to the Eco Products brand and mission, and thus resides within the marketing function. Also, our sustainability maven, David, had a prior engagement, so you get me instead. But lovely to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, we're very happy to have you here with us today and to learn more about what you're doing. Daniel, you're based in Dubai and you're the founder of EroGo. Can you tell us what you're doing?
Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here and speaking to what a beautiful panel today. Well, I'm Daniel Solomon, and I'm the founder of EroGo, which is an impact-driven startup in Dubai. We prevent food waste by automating discounts using AI. And the CEO and the founder of a digital agency serving global brands. And I'm happy to tell you more about what we do in details in a bit. Thank you again for that, Lena.
Nice to have you here as well. I'd like to start off by asking all of you, what excites you most about sustainability right now? What is the number one thing that really gets you excited? Nicole, did you want to start?
Sure. I guess the thing that is exciting to me, I just feel like there's such a collaboration right now that's happening in sustainability. And It seems like so many different groups and organizations are really starting to come together and see that now is the time to collectively work together and make an impact. So for me, I guess that's what makes it so exciting is I feel like the pool of participants has grown significantly just within the last year or so.
How about you, Patrick? I see you nodding your head.
Absolutely. I would also just say the potential which particularly technology has to kind of act as a multiplier for good sustainability and environmental outcomes. So we have some of this technology here at Delivery Hero, but there's a lot of amazing companies out there who are leveraging high technology solutions to create, the multipliers to create really tangible impact. And it's really helping create new solutions to focus on some of the most challenging environmental issues of our time. Obviously global warming to name one, and the global plastic pollution problem to name another. So yeah, the potential and the innovation that is currently in the field is really exciting for me, I think.
What about you, Daniel? What does sustainability mean to you?
I really think that, the conversations that were not being had before have been, we're having those conversations. And I think that's very, very important. So sustainability definitely means different things to different people, obviously. But for me, I look at sustainability, if I was to think about it as the end of life of something, and the end of life can only be the end of life when it actually adds value to something and creates new life. And when it creates new life, it would benefit, the society, environmental and economical, ecosystem in itself. So if it doesn't benefit it, then I guess, in that particular sense, it doesn't really add, that value, and it's not sustainable. Yeah.
That's a very good point. So I think today we're going to start by kind of addressing the topic of sustainability from a corporate perspective and some of the things that companies can do to become more sustainable. One of them that I think is particularly crucial for the delivery industry is packaging. Patrick, I believe you've brought something exciting to show us, and I would love to hear more about the sustainability packaging project that has just been launched at Delivery Hero.
Absolutely, Lena, no worries at all. I do have some samples which is sitting here next to me, which is from our new global sustainable packaging range. Basically, in essence, what we're doing here in close partnership with the wonderful Nicole from Eco Products is we're providing sustainable packaging currently to 8 different countries within the Delivery Hero markets, and providing sustainable packaging to those restaurant partners for the same price or cheaper than the plastic packaging which we're trying to replace. Now, this is hugely disruptive for the industry as a whole, because one of the common problems in this space is that plastic packaging is very, very cheap, because it's had 50 years to kind of refine that model, and the economies of scale to create plastic food contact packaging are really, really refined. So sustainable packaging only makes up a small segment of the market, but through partnerships like the Delivery Hero and Eco Products one, hopefully it's going to become a larger and larger part of the market share. And if we can kind of disrupt this space and remove more sustainable packaging from the value streams that Delivery Hero facilitates, it's going to be a huge boon for tackling the global plastic problem, but also does have significant carbon reduction effects if we talk about the first order problem of global warming. So to show you a few samples really, really quick, here is the what we call the single compartment container, which is the standard rectangle that we all eat our lunch out of. So very, very versatile. It's got a few additional features which are really cool. We've done a lot of R&D with Eco Products to ensure the lid is really, really secure. And it's got these additional kind of flaps here under the bottom to make sure the lid is secure. And also, if you're really a big fan of keeping your chicken wings, pommes, chips, whatever it is, crispy, you can actually push through some of the holes on the top of the packaging to allow it to vent. So no more soggy chips for our wonderful consumers, which, consumers kings. We want to make sure we're building the best innovation, regardless of being sustainable or not. We've also got a soup cup, which comes in 2 different sizes. We've got a clamshell, commonly used for a burger, but it can be used for anything. We've also got a salad bowl, again with some additional R&D to ensure it's a nice locking secure system, as well as 3 or 4 other SKUs which I haven't brought with me today. So yeah, there's some of the units that we're putting out to the 8 markets, and these are going across 4 different platform brands, which is Food Panda for parts of Europe and also parts of the Asia Pacific region. Then we've got our friends with Miam in Austria. Then we've got pretty strong presence in the MENA region through Talabat, as also some presence in the Padiocia region in Chile. So it is really a global initiative that we're pushing out, and we're hoping to scale that initiative to many more countries in the near future.
A global mission to have no more soggy chips, I think something we can all get behind. Thanks, Pat. Nicole, as Patrick mentioned, Eco Products is actually involved in this. So tell me, how did this come about, and what are you guys actually doing as part of this?
Right. So this came out of our, I guess, European division, and our sales rep there, Condert, sort of put us in contact with Patrick and our product development team. And we really just started talking about the needs and wants of Delivery Hero. And really thinking through, what makes sense for them. So to your point, the venting piece was, I think, very, very important to Delivery Hero. So putting that into a package was part of it. I think the other piece was really, talking through what are the environmental benefits of the package, and I think that was probably one of the, if not most core to what we provide, right, was making sure that it has the beginning of life and end of life benefits that Delivery Hero was looking for.
Nice. On a slightly different path to sustainability, Irago is fighting food waste and climate change by basically taking products that are just at their best before date, as I understand, Daniel. Why is this so important in the kind of fight or the challenge to become more sustainable?
I really think it's very important because the total greenhouse gas emission that we see, the GHG that we see around the globe, 8% is coming from food waste. And I think if we could address that, I think we're really going another mile to ensuring that, we have a more sustainable future. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. 8%. That is a huge figure. I guess that leads me to the question that I think a lot of people are thinking about right now. What are some of the major challenges we're all facing right now in the sustainability and packaging issue? Because I think there's a lot out there, and I imagine a lot of people are quite overwhelmed and don't know where to start. And some of the stats, can really be quite terrifying. Patrick, what would your advice be?
Well, if we speak specifically about trying to transform the packaging industry, one of the biggest challenges is just the power that these plastic packaging manufacturers have, because they've had the market share for such a long time. It's kind of similar to the conversation around renewable energy versus fossil fuels. Obviously, renewable energy is getting stronger and stronger as an energy source worldwide. That hasn't yet taken over fossil fuels in terms of its prevalence, and it's the same thing for sustainable packaging versus plastic packaging. So this is really why it's so important that global players like Delivery Hero and Eco Products partner up to enable the change in the industry. And it's really important to find your key counterparts within the packaging industry, which we found in Eco Products. One of the other challenges specifically in packaging is there are some unscrupulous players out there in terms of potential suppliers you probably wouldn't want to work with. And this can be for some greenwashing environmental concerns, which are significant, or it also can be for some human health and occupational health and safety concerns when it comes to manufacturing. So one of the reasons we went with the Eco Products partnership is just the quality that they bring to kind of all parts of that process, be it the actual quality and the material that the sustainable packaging is made from, or be it the quality of the manufacturing process, or be it the quality of their ability to partnership with another global player like us, just like themselves. So that's very specific to the packaging conversation, but I could speak for a very long time about this generally, but I'll obviously hand over to someone else.
One question that we actually got from the audience already is that in R&D, so research and development, are the results up to par with the other counterparts? Maybe that's something actually, Nicole, you can speak to, basically that quality issue.
Yeah, right. I think that's a good question. I would say that, right, we've done a significant amount of testing on these products, and sure, there are, quality issues here and there, but in general, right, those are quite minimal. And customers that use this product, we get reviews all the time to say that it's working for my application. The burger and fries are doing well, and to your point, Patrick, the chips, I guess I would say in this instance, are still crispy. So I guess I would say that quality and the processes and procedures that we have in place to check are quite significant. And I would say by the time that the packaging goes out the door, I think we're really happy with the product that we deliver to the market.
No, that makes complete sense. What about from what you've seen, Daniel, about some of the challenges and maybe the path to overcoming these in your industry?
Well, the part that I've really seen is like the challenge is really falls down to the consumer. I think because the consumer awareness is not really there yet when you were talking about sustainable packaging, because a lot of consumers are still not really aware what's the difference between what you deliver to them. And when we make sure that consumers are getting the right awareness and the right education, I think that this would basically help in really changing the conversation, especially where consumers, we all say they're the ones who change the conversations. They're the ones who are demanding brands to really ensure that, some of items that they receive has good quality. And Nicole just mentioned quality, what they're doing to ensure that the best quality is being delivered to the consumers. But this is one of the major challenges that sustainable packaging really does face, because consumers, what they're really used to before, and what you're getting now, is basically they're trying to compare both, and I think that's where the education needs to come in. Of course, this cuts into the cost of production from a startup point of view. Sustainable packaging could be a little bit more expensive, just because when you put in the awareness you have to do to the consumers and also the production, then you also see that as part of the challenge. And that's from what I see as a major issue when it comes to that challenge. Yeah.
There's two really great points that I want to bring up from what you just said. One is about the customer and their education. And this was already one of the questions we've gotten from the audience is, how do I as a customer know the packaging used is sustainable? And I think this is something a lot of people are struggling with, is what's really sustainable? What does it mean to be green? How do I kind of distinguish between these kind of different labels and certifications and things to know that actually, if I am investing more money into a sustainable product, that it actually is? Patrick, do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and it's one of the things the packaging industry is still trying to work on. There is no kind of global sustainable packaging standard. There's different kind of compostability or environmental standards, and the main ones there being the American ASTM standard and also the European EN standard, which we are either having or already have the certification for our packaging against. So there's those kind of standards you can look at, but for the layperson, for the average consumer, that language is really hard to understand. And so the onus is on players like Eco Products and Delivery Hero to go out not just selling the sustainable packaging, but also educating people on how it is sustainable. Now, one of the considerations in this space is what is the end-of-life process which any food contact packaging is going to undergo. Now, in most markets right around the world, the most likely end-of-life circumstance for any food contact packaging, be it your burger box, your pizza box, your pasta box, whatever it is very likely going to end up in landfill or incineration. And then the conversation becomes, okay, what's better to landfill and incinerate? Is it better to landfill, incinerate compostable, sustainable packaging, which obviously yes, or is it better to landfill, incinerate plastic packaging, which will last for 200 years, 1,000 years, or in the case of styrofoam, it never actually biodegrades. And then we talk about incineration. There's obviously some very key carbon and global warming concerns there. We've you are going to incinerate it, better to incinerate plant-based packaging. Sure, there will be some carbon output, but far less and far less toxic than when you try and incinerate petrochemical plastics. So it is a difficult conversation to have, and that there's no kind of, we really shouldn't underestimate that, but it's where, you know, the great marketing team from Delivery Hero can really help kind of educate our restaurant partners and our consumers on all these benefits, to kind of cut through the noise and give them that message that they need to feel empowered that they're making the right environmental decision.
Totally. And I guess, like, following on from that, I guess everyone that is working in the sustainability industry has kind of that responsibility to educate. One of the other questions from the audience, Nicole, was about instructing customers how to recycle packaging. So it's great that we have sustainable packaging, but then we need to basically take it through the right life cycle. And how can we ensure that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and actually was one of my points. So yes, there tends to be a ton of misinformation in the marketplace. You know, what Patrick brought up, I think is important, is looking at the packaging and seeing what labels are on it when it comes to end of life disposal. So looking for, you know, something that says commercially compostable, or something that indicates what you do with that package at its end of life is quite important. I would say that at Eco Products, product labeling and clear product labeling is something that we focus on pretty heavily, because we really, to the point of educating, right? The decision at the end of life or disposal of the product can get so complicated. It's difficult for consumers to know what to do. So focusing on what do you do with this and what is it made of is I think very clear. The other thing that I would add, it can't always just be on the package. Not everyone reads the label. And so we spend a lot of time working with customers and restaurants and end users with what we call bin signage. And so, right, if you've got a composting bin or recycling bin or landfill, you've got, you know, a poster right next to each of those bins that says this package goes here, this package goes there, because it certainly can get very confusing and can be different in any market that you go to. So I would say it's not easy, but clear product labeling and bin signage are two steps to make that process a bit easier.
That sounds definitely like a good first few steps. Some of the audience are now wondering, okay, like the next step from sustainable packaging or this recyclable packaging is reusable packaging, which some people are starting to explore. Daniel, what are your thoughts already on moving into this domain?
I think it's really great because, you know, we relate this back to the consumers, right? So consumers, they have a lot of power. They really demand, you know, change from the companies, they demand change from themselves, and they're the ones using those products. So if we could reuse, you know, some of those packaging that or things that you normally would get every morning, like your normal coffee, I think, you know, a lot of companies are really, you know, innovating in this particular field where you could actually reuse some of those particular packaging. I think it's really great, but when it comes to scale, you know, it's where I really have a little bit of a doubt, because, you know, how many percentage of people really aware of, you know, sustainable packaging, so to say, and if they're using those reusable packaging, will they take that when they're going to maybe make an order for that crispy chicken that Patrick was talking about? So, you know, it's that particular scale why, you know, reusable is really great for those essentials, those things you would normally use at home, like your normal straws, etc., or your coffee. But when it comes to scales for your normal day-to-day food delivery, I think, you know, it really needs to turn to innovation, where you can actually get sustainable packaging being delivered to you. Yeah, like Nicole mentioned, some of the innovations they're working on. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually glad you brought up the concept of scale, because I think that's quite an important thing when we're talking about sustainable packaging and how to actually make it sustainable, cost effective and actually really makes sense for the whole end-to-end experience. Patrick, that's something I think you can talk about, because with this SPP, the Sustainable Packaging Program, you guys actually found a way to make this kind of work at scale and not be super crazy expensive. How did you do that?
Using some key tenets of environmental economics. The way that we achieved that is because Delivery Hero recognized that, we are the biggest fish in the value chains that we create. And as the biggest fish, we have a environmental, ethical, and frankly moral need to kind of help the smaller fish within the value chain become more environmental in how they operate. As the big fish in the value chain, what we can do is we can aggregate the demand of multiple markets across multiple brands and multiple platforms, and their need for sustainable packaging to create economies of scale, where wonderful companies like HeroTalks can provide us pricing that is reflecting that economies of scale. So currently, with the kind of piloting phase of the Sustainable Packaging Program, which is what we're currently in, we're working with 8 different markets. But as we kind of move into 2022, we've got ambitions to kind of bring 16 markets on board, and also to scale the penetration in each of those markets accordingly. And with that economies of scale, obviously the unit economics and the unit pricing gets better, and the more kind of affordable sustainable packaging can be for all our restaurant partners worldwide.
Someone also from the audience is asking about the profitability. Can it be profitable?
Well, absolutely. I'm a stern believer it can be profitable. One of the key things that I always try to work towards when I try and create environmental outcomes is trying to create environmental outcomes that are tied directly to revenue and profit. Because if you can achieve that, the multiplier effect occurs where the environmental outcomes are completely incentivized by a company's growth and success. So at the moment, it's not quite yet turning a profit. I don't think we're very far away from a break-even and profit point. And I do see the potential for the Global Sustainable Packaging Program to be a quite substantial positive revenue stream in the future. So yes, I think it definitely can.
To a slightly different topic now about the customer experience, I think that's something in the delivery industry that's always at the top of our mind, is how can we deliver an amazing experience. And I guess now we're talking about how sustainable packaging can come into that. So now you're dealing with things, of hot and cold temperatures, also the rider's journey, also making sure that when it arrives, it looks nice. How can you basically make sure from the entire process that the sustainable packaging actually does that job of making the customer experience even better than before? Nicole, do you have maybe some ideas on that?
I do. I guess there's a couple things, right? So keeping cold food cold and hot food hot lots of times means separation or compartments. So I would say that, we're seeing sort of like what Patrick mentioned before, an increase in interest in compartmentalized containers, or things that, again, separate cold food from hot food and make sure that they maintain the temperatures that they need to maintain. The other thing that I would say is, renewable packaging and compostable packaging is different than traditional plastic packaging, right? And, when you put a lid on, you don't hear the same snap, you don't hear it seal in the same fashion. But I think we've done a pretty good job finding ways around that. So, putting those tabs underneath to make sure that the package is sealed is an option. We also offer compostable stickers if you want to kind of seal the package for the end user. I guess that's also some sort of security to ensure that the package hasn't been opened by the driver. But that's another option or way I think that we can upgrade, if you will, the experience of delivery packaging.
Definitely. And maybe Daniel, I would be interested to know from you, are there any kind of specific kind of food groups or types that you see particularly in your work that you really seem to be able to save a lot more of than others? Did anything surprise you there?
Well, quite interestingly, I think there are a couple of different food groups. I think you could definitely save a lot of like the groceries, which are basically going to the users, which is the fruits and veg. Just because the whole food waste issue is not just about an item that is near expiration. It's due to so many other reasons, such as those problems that we call very funny, maybe because, people are not buying them, or because they look too big. It's not getting to the supermarket because, the shape is just off. And we see, that is the kind of food groups that, you could definitely rescue more. However, when you go beyond that, you still have the the food staples. Those items that you could definitely save a lot of, especially when it comes to near expiration. I'm talking about 4 weeks out, which is still perfectly good food that could be consumed without getting into the whole health issues that you might be looking at. And it's just about the customer perception, because typically, where we see that, experience and also the customer perception about a particular produce that we're getting, if the messaging is done right, I think the customer is starting to understand, particularly in the region where, people don't just understand what you say near expiration. And I think it's something that it's really, really big. And it goes back to that, giving them that right information to say, well, your grocery, is still coming to you. It tastes really good. It's still the same, that you get in your store. But you're doing good in the process. And in some cases, you're also saving some money. Yeah.
That's always really nice to hear. The really the true impact that this can have. I would also be curious to know from actually all of you the impact that you have seen that COVID has had on the perspective towards sustainability and packaging. Have you seen any differences over the last year and a half, or any insights you can share? Maybe Patrick, you want to start?
Yeah, sure thing, Lena. It's a really good question. Well, one of the very tangible impacts that COVID's had is a lot of us have been locked in our homes and our apartments for quite some time, which means the need for delivery services like the ones that Deliveroo provide have skyrocketed, because people can't get outside to get what they normally would. So with that huge increase in demand for delivery solutions, there's obviously a huge increase in packaging required to facilitate those solutions. Unfortunately, most of the global packaging industry is still petrochemical plastic based, so there has been a definite uptick in the rate of the global plastic pollution problem. What I would say though is, with all kind of with the effect of COVID, there has kind of been a bit of a reawakening for some different consumer bases and some different kind of legislative bodies that sustainability can work. The classic example here is, when we locked all the cities down, which is obviously not sustainable economically, we saw the dolphins come back to the Venetian accounts, and who would have thought it? So it kind of, the pause that COVID forced us all to have kind of showed that the Earth can bounce back if we give it the opportunity. And with that, I think there's been a huge kind of revival or reigniting of the passion for a lot of people and a lot of bodies around the world to actually make sustainable solutions work. So one of the upsides of COVID is we saw a glimpse of a world that can heal itself. Now we've just got to help it do that in our day-to-day while our economies are running and they're not shut down.
It's a very nice take on it. Nicole, you're based in America, and I'd be curious to know what observations you have.
Yeah, I would say that my observations are quite similar to Patrick's, and specifically in our business, right? I think we saw quite a shift from our normal bundle items, plates and that sort of thing, to clamshells and containers that really facilitate takeout or delivery packaging. And so that is definitely one thing I think that shifted during COVID is, right, restaurants were closed, couldn't do on-premise dining anymore, and shifted their restaurant models or their business models to think about how to create that on-premise solution in people's homes. So definitely an increase there. I think to Patrick's point, there was also somewhat of a reawakening as people start getting all this packaging in their home and seeing how, the sheer impact of it. There was sort of questions as to why is all this packaging here? Do we need all of this? Can we consolidate? And so that has, I think, reawakened a bit the need for sustainable packaging. I guess I would also add, right, we offer single-use packaging, but sort of look at our packaging as the vehicle that delivers the food to the compost as opposed to it going to the landfill. So it seems to me to be that people are starting to connect the dots a bit more on that aspect of it. And again, just really thinking that, COVID has opened some eyes for certain folks as to the need for work in this space.
What about you, Daniel? What have you noticed in Dubai and the Middle East?
Well, I really agree with Nicole and Patrick there. But I think COVID really changes the priority of things. I think, not just from the way, companies are doing things, but also the government, in terms of this particular conversation about, how are we doing things before and how we're doing them now. I also think it also accelerated innovation because there's a lot of founders who were probably working on something else before COVID. And now they're seeing all this impact with all these deliveries coming home and, all this particular packaging that they're getting. And maybe they're finding that they're not really, as sustainable as they could be. And they're finding like real innovative ways to really, create things that would be sustainable for the next future. So in addition to Nicole and Patrick there, I think it's the prioritization of things really change. And also, innovation, where a lot of founders in that particular field are really creating new technologies to really address the issue of packaging. Yeah.
That leads me to a question or a thought about just how sustainable can sustainable packaging be. So one of our audience members has just pointed out that any kind of food packaging obviously uses lots of resources like energy, water, chemicals, minerals, woods, fibers, and then you've got to manufacture it, and then you have to basically ship it out, and there's like a whole lot of stuff going on. How do we really make sure that it is a good option and not just another less bad option, if that makes sense? Patrick, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a key mechanism which a lot of sustainability and environmentalists use to measure these kind of things. It's called a life cycle assessment, commonly referred to as an LCA, just for another one of the 1,000 acronyms we're always using. But basically what that is doing is it's considering the full kind of scope of the value chain, from all the inputs to manufacturing, to the delivery of the goods, to the use of the goods, to the end-of-life experience, and kind of giving it a sustainability rating or kind of score. Now, the most common kind of LCAs these days are measured in carbon because, carbon emissions is directly impacting the first order environmental problem of global warming. So we can use these kind of analytical frameworks to work out which one is best. Now, when we talk about say the manufacturing of sustainable packaging like this, which is made from agricultural bioproducts or waste stream material, compared to the manufacturing of, say, petrochemical plastics, the carbon output difference there is quite substantial. From some of the research that I've seen, there's actually potentially a 96 times positive multiplier in terms of carbon reduction between petrochemical plastics and sustainable packaging. And a lot of that is born out of what's going into that manufacturing process and also where the raw resources are sourced from. So basically, with our sustainable packaging range, for the most part, we're not extracting any new raw resources from the earth through our operations or as eco products. We're using resources which would be there regardless of us having our global sustainable packaging program. And the key material that this packaging is made from is actually something called sugarcane bagasse, which is the offshoots of sugar production. So, the sugar is manufactured and the sugar is put in our tea and coffee because we all love sugar. But there's this waste stream, this cane plant-based material that is left over. 10, 20 years ago, the farmer would burn that, or they'd have to pay someone to get rid of it. We can now take that waste stream material, press it into packaging, and give it new life. So that's kind of how our sustainable packaging is kind of different to the status quo packaging. And that key methodology there that we used is life cycle assessment.
A very useful explanation, thank you. We have another question basically on the location of the manufacturing of our sustainability range. So Nicole, maybe you can share some thoughts on that in terms of how it's manufactured. Is it normally localized in the markets, or how does that process look like? I think the kind of question here is about kind of the carbon footprint impact.
Sure. Depending on the item, it's manufactured in lots of different locations, right? So sugarcane or molded fiber is manufactured in Asia. So if you think about it though, right, there's the raw material input, and there's lots of things that go into making that. So one of the things that we focus on quite heavily is making sure that the raw material is as close to the factory as possible, so that it doesn't have to be transported from location to location to location to actually make the product. So that's, I guess, an example. Sugarcane is made in Asia. We have a PLA cold cup that's manufactured in the States by a sister company in Tennessee, and then the corn is grown in another state that's quite close. So that's another example of where we're trying to keep the carbon footprint and the locations close to each other. So I could list all locations, but it will take quite a long time. So I'm just going to use those two as examples, and hopefully that answers the question.
No, that's a great example. And I think if people are curious to know more about the specifics, they can probably go to your website and get in touch. Maybe on a different note, Daniel, there's the question about what consumers can be doing and, thinking about creative ways to repurpose and reuse packaging in other areas. One suggestion is such as growing plants, for example. Do you have maybe some other kind of fun tips or tricks or advice for the audience on other ways to be sustainable in their life beyond packaging?
Well, there's definitely multiple areas one can be, sustainable, and you basically mentioned one, Lena. I think there are other ways. I think sustainability starts, with even the clothes that we all put on. I think, that's if we want to be very, very broad. But let's bring it back to, just, from the food kind of point of view. I think, most of the seeds that we probably would, throw away when we ate those favorite fruits that we love, I think could be replanted, and that is birthing new life. I think you also have, which is talking about like food loss, which is different from food waste, those particular trash that you would call trash from a food can be decomposed. And there's a lot of like ways and innovative way for you to do that in the house. And I think a lot of companies are really doing, innovative things to really ensure that you could be sustainable, decompose, those particular wastes you would have in your house. And the list could go on, but I think those are like quick few examples. Obviously, Patrick, feel free to jump in, or Nicole.
Yeah, I guess I would add things that consumers can do. It may seem small, but voting with your money. So supporting organizations that uphold their sustainability ideals, ultimately help those companies grow. And really, I guess by voting with our money, we're telling the market where we want it to go. So, support organizations that are upholding, their sustainability ideals. And again, while it may seem small, collectively, it can actually have a pretty big impact in the market.
I mean, it's also not just on consumers. I think there's a lot that we can do individually. But something actually, Patrick, when you had a recent discussion in our Hero Voice podcast with Evelyn Tay from Food Panda, we also brought up the question of what can governments and other regulators do to kind of bring this issue to the forefront. What were some of the takeaways that you had on that?
Yeah, sure. So currently right now from the most up-to-date research, there's about 127 different countries which are bringing in some form of legislation to combat the global plastic problem. Now, most of these take the form of bans on single-use plastic items. Very common ones here include plastic forks and knives and plates, and in some legislative bodies that does extend to food delivery packaging. So the EU is making quite a few waves here in the legislation, which is, I think it's going to pass down sometime next year in terms of legislating against the use of single-use plastic items. I actually just saw some research earlier today that India is making some pretty powerful moves as well in, I think it's July 2022, to follow suit. And India, as such a high population country, the tangible impact that can have is pretty impressive. I think, though, to go a bit further than that, all these kind of regulations are great and very welcome. But like most environmentalists, the regulations are often a little bit too slow for our liking. So I think there's a lot to be said for using actual economic mechanisms to have the free market change quicker. Now, the obvious one that you speak about when we talk about global warming is the carbon tax. And some markets and countries are using this, some markets are not. Hopefully we'll all get there one day. But something that is not really discussed that much is a plastic tax. And what this would do, it would kind of fully disincentivize all parts of the value chain to stop using plastic and move away from plastic and start using more kind of reusable and sustainable options. So they're kind of some of the things that kind of can occur on the legislative side that can help kind of push the agenda forward a bit further, I think.
Nicole or Daniel, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to share on what regulators could be doing?
Well, I totally agree with Patrick. I think regulators or the governments, they play a very crucial role in ensuring that this particular mandate is basically being implemented across multiple sectors. I'll use an example in the UAE, for instance, the hospitality sector. They went sustainable in July of this year, which means 100% sustainability, and this cuts across like multiple cycle of how they actually do their business. And I think it's basically really, really great for them to be able to implement those kind of change, not just because the government is telling us to, but because most of these businesses are actually seeing that yes, we could actually do a lot more and contribute to the society we all live in, rather than being, just companies who are basically destroying the planet that we live in. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Are there any other kind of innovation that is happening in the sphere that I think we should be focusing on right now? Nicole, maybe?
Yeah, good question. So I guess I see a couple areas. First, material innovation, and probably those of us that are sitting in the room today don't know, or maybe a couple people know, I'm not sure. But some of the materials that are out there today may not be around in the future, and there might be those out there that are replacing them and have different properties that work better. So I guess I see that as one area. Today PLA is a commonly used bioplastic, and it struggles with heat tolerance. So I could foresee, and there are other materials out there that have higher heat tolerances that just aren't as big yet. But I guess I could see some development work there that could really have an impact in the industry. And then I guess I would say the other thing that, we focus mainly on plant-based materials today, but there are, I think there's an opportunity for some recycled content out there. So recycled PET, recycled polypropylene, I see as an opportunity for innovation in the future.
What exactly are these two things that you mentioned? Very difficult words to spell, but maybe not something that the audience is familiar with.
So PET is a type of plastic, as is polypropylene. They're both different types of plastics. And so when we say our PET, it means it's recycled. So it is essentially has been used before, and we're taking something that has been used before and reusing that in making a new container, if that makes sense.
Nice. We're almost at the end of our hour. I can't believe it already. So if one in the audience has any final questions they want to ask Daniel, Nicole, or Patrick, I would encourage you to put those in the Q&A now. But as we're wrapping up, Daniel, I'd be interested to know, what developments are you hoping to see in, say, next 5 to 10 years in the sustainability sphere?
I really think about it like, a society where, we don't have as many, carbon footprints that we create when we produce food, when we distribute food, and when we deliver food. And I think in the next 5 years, I would like to see a lot of innovation in the way, the production of food is being made. And we're seeing a lot of changes in this particular regards with some kind of like alternative to meats that are being produced. And also when it comes to the delivery, of food, we want to make sure that when we're doing that last mile delivery to the consumers, that the carbon footprint is minimal as much as possible in the next 5 years. And I would like to also say, when it comes to the actual food, that crispy chicken and, and chips that Patrick mentioned, when it gets to the consumers, it's being delivered in, with that experience in mind that Nicole mentioned. You want to receive your food in a more, if it's hot food, you want to get it the way it came from the restaurants. That's number one. Number two, you want to see innovation that really ensure that packaging, that is being delivered is 100% sustainable. And, some of those particular, and my take for the future would probably be in the bioplastic phase. That's just because of scale when we relate that back, because plastic today cuts across everything that we use in multiple industries. And because of that, when you have innovative ways to really, or alternatives to plastic, I think that would really help solve, issues when it comes to food delivery, and not just, the normal hot food that we receive, but also those food that we get in stores, or, that you would get at the restaurants, or being stored for a very long time. Yeah.
Totally. And thinking about trends, Patrick, I'd be curious to know if you have any observations you've seen about what kind of customers are gravitating towards more environmentally conscious choices. So for example, I know like on our app, like you can like tick if you want to use like the cutlery or not, whether it should come or not. And that's like one way to make it more sustainable. But who's doing this, and who really has the kind of sustainability at the front of their minds?
Yeah, sure, Lynn. It's a really good question. Well, from a lot of the research that Delivery Hero itself has done, we found there's this huge rise kind of worldwide in the what we call the rise of the sustainable consumer. Usually the demographics of these kind of consumers, they range from about 18 to 35 to 40. There's obviously variation in that from market to market, but we are seeing that more and more consumers are kind of making not just cost-based decisions, but value-based decisions. And I think it's a huge potential kind of demographic for lots of businesses to kind of use to grow their own business. So, the more sustainable, Delivery Hero and our markets become, the more and more we'll be able to access that market share, and the more we'll be able to generate more revenue for our restaurant partners, and our order numbers will go up. So it is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I think those companies that really crack the methodology of how to kind of really speak to and interact with that sustainable consumer, they're going to be the very, very successful businesses of the future, because people's habits and hearts and minds are changing.
It's very exciting. Maybe one final difficult question for you, Nicole, is that there has been some research and some conflicting research basically on the ultimate impact on the environment, of plastics. And I guess I would be curious to know, what is kind of your opinion on the different kinds of criticisms in terms of like what is actually really sustainable and what is really environmentally friendly, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of different studies out there that say lots of different things. I think where we as an organization have landed is to say that, right, when you think about our packaging as a method to deliver food to the compost, that really is the crux of what we do and what we exist for. And certainly there's lots of work to be done, I think, around building composting infrastructure and getting markets to a point where we can fully close the loop. But baby steps and steps in the right direction are where we are at today. And just trying to bring awareness and advocate and teach people why this is important, I think is what we spend a lot of time doing. And it sort of goes back to what Patrick was saying. People are starting to become aware and really starting to train them on why this is important and why packaging may not be recyclable, right, if you have a bunch of food stuck to it, but rather it goes into the compost bin are things that we're heavily focused on.
Thanks so much. Daniel, Nicole, and Patrick, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today. I know I've gained a lot of insights, and we've gone quite in depth in terms of sustainable packaging. Just as maybe a final word to the audience, what is the one thing that you would like people to take away from this in terms of how they can be more sustainable, why they should pick sustainable packaging options, or anything that you'd like to share? Patrick?
Yeah, sure. Good question. Well, when it comes to packaging and making sustainable choices, you can't really go wrong if you stay away from petrochemical plastics. So try to limit the amount of plastic packaging that you're using in your day-to-day, and try and seek out those which are plant-based materials. So be that paper-based, or be that agricultural byproducts like our sustainable packaging. That's always going to help kind of push things in the right direction. And also say, be noisy, be loud as consumers. Create the change that you want to see with your money and your purchase decisions, as Nicole said before, but also by being an advocate to those around you to create the change at a grassroots level.
Great advice. Nicole?
Yeah, mine is very similar. I guess I would say, as much as possible, and guilty, I don't do this all the time, but, reading the labels on packaging and really understanding what you're buying and purchasing, and, what's in the food that you're consuming, and trying to be an educated consumer is, I guess, the advice that I would give to the group.
Yeah, I'd like to really just say, more consumers should be more cautious, and they should be those cautious consumers who are making choices based on, what they buy, and this cuts across, the kind of, food they would basically buy off the shelf, how it's been packaged. And the more, they change this narrative and they make this demand, I think a lot of companies, just like Delivery Hero, is doing, will continue to, make those kind of like implementation to ensure that, we're getting more sustainable, product being delivered. So I think it starts from the consumers, and the consumers, you have a lot of, part to play in just, demanding and more companies already know this, and they're already making the change, and and that's about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Daniel, Nicole, and Patrick. It's been really, really enjoyable and insightful to talk to you about packaging the future and how we can pave the way for a greener environment. I think there's a lot of takeaways from this discussion and lots for us all to go and think about and also implement straight away in our daily lives, even the next time we order food. Of course, to the audience, thank you again for listening. And if you have any further questions or want to know more about sustainability at Delivery Hero, you can actually visit our website where we have a lot of information there. And we're more than happy to connect and answer any questions you might have. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, great evening, wherever you are in the world, and see you for the next Hero Talk.
Thank you, Lena, Patrick, Nicole.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.